Another country starts talking about nuclear weapons. Why leaders start issuing warnings, holding emergency meetings, threatening sanctions. It's because the world has seen what just one nuclear weapon can do. No, actually, two nuclear weapons, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And after those two bombs were used in 1945, nuclear weapons have never been used in war again. Let's talk about it. By the time 1945 arrived, the world had already been at war for 6 years. The conflict started in 1939 when Adolf Hitler, the leader of Germany, he ordered the invasion of Poland as part of his plan to expand German territory and power across Europe. That invasion, it did not stay contained to one country for long. Other nations started taking sides, forming alliances. It turned the whole situation into a global war. On one side were the Allied powers, including Britain, the US, and later the Soviet Union. On the other side, we had the Axis powers, mainly Germany, Italy, and Japan. Japan, they also had their own expansion plans, and they had been trying to increase their control across Asia, including invading parts of China and surrounding regions in an attempt to gain resources and strengthen their influence, As tensions continued to grow, Japan's relationship with the US, it became hostile. In December of 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on US naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. More than 2,000 people were killed. Several ships were destroyed. At that point, the United States, they had already been supporting countries that were fighting against Germany by providing weapons, financial assistance, but the US had not officially entered the war as a fighting nation. The attack on Pearl Harbor, it changed everything. The very next day, the United States declared war formally on Japan. Soon after that, Germany declared war on the United States. The United States declared war back on Germany. From that moment, the United States became fully involved in World War II, fighting both in Europe and across the Pacific. Over the next few years, the war caused enormous destruction across multiple continents, with cities bombed, millions of soldiers and civilians losing lives and property. Before the atomic bomb was even considered, many Japanese cities, they had already been heavily bombed using normal weapons. And in March of 1945, Tokyo experienced a massive firebombing. It destroyed huge areas of the city, killed tens of thousands of people in just one night. By this stage of the war, Japan was already under serious pressure, but even after all the destruction, the government refused to surrender. This helps to explain why American leaders started looking for a faster way to end the war, okay? While the fighting was still going on, the United States had secretly been developing a completely new kind of weapon through a program that was known as the Manhattan Project. Beginning in 1942, thousands of scientists, engineers, military officials, they worked in secret to create an atomic bomb. At the time, there was fear that Germany might develop such a weapon first, and that made this project urgent for the US. After years of research, the first successful atomic test took place on July 16, 1945. It was in the desert in New Mexico. The explosion, it confirmed that the weapon could work. Attention then turned to how it might be used to end the war more quickly. Just days before the bomb was used, Allied leaders, they sent Japan a final message telling the country, you need to surrender now. They warned that if Japan refused, it would face serious destruction. Japan did not accept those terms at that time, and so the war continued. A committee had already been considering possible target cities. They were thinking, where in Japan should we target? They were looking for locations with military or industrial importance, places where the impact of the bomb will be clearly visible. Now, one of the cities on the list was Hiroshima, an important military headquarters, and it was also a major port and industrial center as well. The city had not yet been heavily bombed during the war. That meant that the effects of the new weapon would be easier to observe. On the morning of August 6th, 1945, Hiroshima was already awake, moving around like every other day in a country where there was war for years, People were heading to work, students were settling into lessons, families were trying to continue their life as normally as possible despite, the uncertainty of wartime. Just after 8:15 in the morning, a US B-29 bomber called Enola Gay flew over the city. At first, nothing about this aircraft seemed unusual because Japanese cities had already been experiencing bombings, like I said. But this plane was carrying something very different. Inside that plane was a single bomb nicknamed Little Boy, a uranium atomic bomb. It was developed as part of the Manhattan Project, okay? After it was released, the bomb fell for about 45 seconds before exploding approximately 600 meters above the city. The bomb was designed to explode in the air rather than on the ground so that the blast would spread more widely across the city. In an instant, everything changed. A powerful flash of light filled the sky, followed by intense wave of heat. It rapidly went across Hiroshima. As soon as the blast went off, a huge cloud rose into the sky, forming what was later known as a mushroom cloud. That's one of the most recognizable images in modern history. People close to the center of that explosion, there was no chance. Buildings collapsed almost immediately. The force of the blast, it shattered windows far beyond the center of the city. Within minutes, fires started breaking out across multiple areas at the same time. Before long, large sections of Hiroshima were burning. What had been a functioning city moments earlier, it was suddenly overwhelmed by destruction. It's estimated that between 70,000 and 80,000 people died immediately. Many of them were ordinary civilians who were simply going about their daily routines when the bomb exploded. Not everybody in Hiroshima was Japanese, okay? Some victims were Korean workers who had been brought to Japan during the war, as well as prisoners of war from other countries, But the impact, it did not end with that initial explosion. Thousands of people who survived, they had severe burns, injuries. Many people started experiencing unusual symptoms within hours or days. They had extreme weakness, vomiting, unexplained bleeding, hair loss. One of the most frightening things about the bomb was that the danger did not end after the explosion. Radiation affected the body in ways that people did not fully understand at that time. And in the days and weeks that followed, many more people died from the radiation illness. Hospitals had been destroyed. Many medical workers had also been killed or seriously injured. So that made treatment extremely difficult for everybody. By the end of 1945, the estimated death toll connected to just the Hiroshima bombing, it had reached around 140,000 people. Those who survived, they later became known as hibakusha. That's a Japanese term used to describe the people affected by the atomic bomb. Many survivors, they continued to suffer long-term health effects, including increased risk of cancer. Others faced stigma because people feared the effects of the radiation exposure. Even if they were okay, people did not want to be around them. Even after the destruction of Hiroshima became known, Japan did not immediately surrender. Just 3 days later, a second atomic bomb would drop in another city. The second bomb was dropped on August 9, 1945. The original target that day was actually for a different city called Kokura. But heavy clouds and smoke, it made it difficult for pilots to see their target clearly. After several attempts, the plane changed direction and headed towards its secondary target, which was Nagasaki. At 11:02 in the morning, another atomic bomb was released. This one was called the Fat Man. Unlike Hiroshima, which used uranium, Fat Man used plutonium and produced an even more powerful explosion. Again, there was a sudden flash of light followed by intense heat and pressure spreading across the city. Now, Nagasaki's landscape includes hills and valleys, and that slightly reduced the spread of destruction in certain areas. But the damage was still catastrophic. Around 40,000 people died immediately. By the end of 1945, the total number of deaths connected to Nagasaki had reached roughly 70,000. Many of the victims, of course, were civilians who were going about their normal days. Among the survivors was a man named Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He had been in Hiroshima on business when the first bomb exploded on August 6th. He survived, he was injured, he traveled back home to Nagasaki. 3 days later, they bombed Nagasaki again. And he survived. He later described seeing the flash again after realizing he couldn't believe that the same thing was happening to him in less than a week. After the second bombing, Japan's situation, it became extremely difficult to sustain. Another major development was happening at the same time. On August 8th, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and they started invading Japanese-controlled territory. Japan had hoped that the Soviet Union might help to negotiate a more favorable way to end the war. But instead, the Soviet Union joined the fight against them. Now, Japan was facing powerful enemies from multiple directions at the same time. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender. Emperor Hirohito delivered a radio broadcast informing the nation that the war had ended. For many citizens, this was the first time that they had ever heard the emperor's voice in their lives. World War II officially ended on September 2nd, 1945. By the end of 1945, about 140,000 people had died in Hiroshima and about 70,000 people in Nagasaki. Some estimates place the combined number of deaths from both bombings as high as 200,000 to 250,000 people, including those who died later from injuries and radiation effects. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they remain the only time that nuclear weapons have ever been used in war. The level of destruction seen in those two cities, it changed how the world thinks about weapons forever. After 1945, several countries started developing their own nuclear weapons because they saw the effects, they saw it could end wars. This created years of tension between countries who were afraid what would happen if nuclear weapons were ever used again, Even today, nuclear weapons continue to influence global politics because once the world saw the scale of destruction they can cause, it became clear how dangerous they truly were. Every country wanted one.